16.57%. Basically, in terms of market capitalization, capital gain of around 13.2 trillion from 62.7 trillion to about 75.96 trillion by the end of June. Sectoral dynamics, we see consumer goods up by around 22% as the NGX consumer goods index went up 22%. Then the banking sector, we saw NGX banking index up by 18% thereabout. However, in the oil and gas space, we saw that the oil and gas index slumped by roughly 10%. There was really, it really dragged down the broader bullish sentiment. However, let's move on to the conversation. On the show this morning, we have Adebayo Adebanjo, who is a research associate with Cardinal Stone Securities. Good morning, Mr. Adebayo. Good morning, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Good morning, David. How are you doing?
I'm doing very fine. It's we are very short on time, but we'll make the conversation as pleasurable as possible. Let's go on. What's your take on the market this year? What's your
I mean,
major
I would say that
take?
the market has been pretty fun for the most part of the year. I mean, relative to this time last year, we're still trailing, the performance. When you look at half year in 2024, the market was up about 34%, relative to the 16.6 that we have here. So while it's still positive, not as great as we saw last year, nevertheless, you see that most of the gains that we've seen in half year was largely from the second quarter of the year, and you'd see that this stemmed largely from corporate actions and strong earnings, especially Q1 earnings, because you see that the information that investors had as of Q2 was largely Q1 numbers, right?
Yes.
And so what you tend to do is when you analyze the performance that you've seen in Q1, just as a guide into what companies will do by a full year, it looks very, very promising. We're seeing companies record over 100% revenue growth over year on year in Q1. So that just gives you a pointer that some of these sectors that have been badly hit before, like telecoms, like consumer goods, are already now on the path of recovery. So it shows that investors are taking position given the lower prices that we saw over the course of the last year. And I'm hoping that these strong fundamentals will drive positive rally into these companies' share prices as well.
So what are looking at some of our best performers, you've seen them, I don't know if you'll be following, you'll be seeing that we just listed a number of them: Better Glass, Honeywell, Champion Breweries, and the likes. So which of them do you think that these stocks can continue this run, especially Ella Leaks?
I mean, if you look at these companies, right, you'd see that they are not the major names that we tend to talk about. In fact,
yes,
exactly. I cannot say for certain if there are any houses that do like equity coverage on any of these numbers. However, though, we have looked at some of these numbers and we've seen that some of these companies are reporting very, very strong earnings performance. I mean, it's very, very, it's very possible that the market is ignoring some of these very smaller names, but we see that, they are reporting really, really good numbers. When you look at companies like Better Glass, for instance, Better Glass reported EPS growth of over 500% year on year. Wow. So that just shows you that this is a stock that is largely being ignored by the market, and now attention is coming back to the company, which is something that we expected. As of the end of last year, we had expected that this year, fundamentals will come back to the fore, and we think that more investors are now paying attention to company core fundamentals, given the slowdown in corporate action announcements. There have been slowdown in announcements of acquisitions, of listings. Yes, exactly. So now everybody's like, okay, well, how are these companies even doing? Let's see what their performances are like. And so Q1 has given us a kind of idea of how well they are performing, and that investors are now looking back at them again. When you look at companies like Ella Leaks, I mean, Ella Leaks at the moment doesn't even have financials, but the market is very optimistic about what the company is going to do. I mean, just recently we saw news about the company looking to raise capital of about 250 billion naira. So this gives you a sense that the company has some strategic intent to deploy this capital that it is raising. So I think this is what is driving the rally in this company. So a lot of people are optimistic that Ella Leaks will begin to report earnings and positive earnings, that is going into subsequent quarters. But I think that's going to be primarily hinged on this capital raise exercise and how well this capital will be deployed. But again, it's all market sentiment at this point in time. So I think that's what has been driving this performance.
All right. That's all we can take on the show for this morning. I'm so sorry. We are well out of time. Thank you so much, Adebayo Adebanjo, for sticking with us on BDTV.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. To our guests or to our viewers, thank you for staying with us as we've discussed, as we've given a breakdown of what to expect in the market in the coming. We'll be looking out for the market, what the market will say in Q3, in Q4. Basically, stay tuned to Business Day TV.